We have a total of 7 properties across the northern rim of the basin. And what's really interesting there, it's very underexplored. This updated PEA is it's a 4,950 ton per day case, which is below the federal trigger. At 5,000 ton per day, you trigger federal permitting. We've designed this updated PEA not to be a study on paper with necessarily the best economics, but a strategic one.
Hello and welcome back to The Next Big Rush. I have here the CEO of Fortune Bay, Dale Verran, and we're going to get into a big piece of news that just came out in the last 2-3 days. It's about a very, very exciting company with 2 very, very exciting projects and a bunch of upside that we don't even talk about, because when it was the downturn in the market, these guys grabbed a bunch of land that is actually worth a lot now. So we're going to dive into it. Dale, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Fabi. Great to be here.
Okay, so let's just tell the uranium hungry folks at home what assets we have in uranium, and then let's go into the PEA for Goldfields after that. So, because people ask me about, like off the beaten path uranium assets and off the beaten path uranium companies. And most people don't really think of Fortune Bay that way, but because the story is getting out there more and more, I think people should know that, actually we do have a couple of things in the bag and they're moving forward. So can you just give us a brief overview of our uranium assets and what's happening to them, please?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we are a gold-focused company, but we have, picked up some tremendous uranium assets on that northern margin of the Athabasca Basin. And we did that at a time when, the market was a bit quiet. The uranium story hadn't really got moving yet, and saw some tremendous opportunity to do some low-cost acquisitions. That was through staking on a great set of properties. So we have a total of 7 properties across the northern rim of the basin. And what's really interesting there, it's very underexplored. But it's all the right geological ingredients for a major discovery, and it's made easy because we're up there with our gold project. So we acquired that ground, and we've taken a decision to focus our spend on what we deem as lower risk development assets on the gold side. And what we've done with the uranium is partnered those out. We got 2 great partners across the projects who are now spending on those projects. There's work ongoing at the moment, and very promising for discovery potential.
Very cool. I love it that you guys don't need to spend the money to advance some of these projects. Just let somebody else foot the bill and you keep some of the upside. How much is the company keeping upside wise? What's the portion here?
Our Strike and Mermac projects, those are optioned to a company called Aero Energy. There we able to keep a 30% stake. They've got to spend $6.5 million to get to a 70% interest. And then on the Woods projects, we've optioned those to a private Australian group called New Horizon. They're soon to list in Australia. And there's a spend of $3 million for an 80%. So we can retain a 20%. And those option agreements all designed to get the projects to a discovery stage where we can then elect to fund our share or otherwise choose to dilute. But at the same time, generating revenues from those through option and management fees. It helps align with our keeping dilution to a minimum, and those revenues help cover quite a large portion of our G&A.
That is super. Love that. Okay, so let's get into the PEA, which is what I really want to hear about. First of all, you had some numbers before, you had a PEA before. Why do it again in 2025? What's the reasoning here?
Yeah, it's not just a study on paper again here. It's a very strategic PEA for us that really sets the stage for how this project will develop. In 2022, we did the PEA, the market wasn't quite there, and we decided to pull back a bit. Let's not blow up our capital structure and let this sort of fall on deaf ears. Let's be patient, because we've always been long on gold, the cycle, waiting for the cycle and aligning our capital with the cycle. In 2025, what we've done with this updated PEA now is actually change the development scenario. Previously we had a 7,500 ton per day throughput. That's a scenario that's going to produce a big NPV, IRR. The numbers look great, but we're looking at this purely from an executable point of view. And what's key about what we've done with this updated PEA is it's a 4,950 ton per day case, which is below the federal trigger. At 5,000 ton per day, you trigger federal permitting. So we're able to keep the permitting in province with this updated PEA and basically expedite the path to production. And the reason for that is we have an approved, provincially approved EIS already for the project. And we're able to build on that with this updated mine plan and also leverage off the existing infrastructure on the project. So we've designed this updated PEA not to be a study on paper with necessarily the best economics, but a strategic one that it's executable, it's bite-sized, it has a longer mine life, it's more financeable, it's something that will move in this market, and really excited about taking that forward now as we work toward a PFS.
This is really interesting how you were able to decrease, like the size of the operations, and at the same time, the numbers look so good. So, what are the headline numbers for, a conservative? I think you guys did, today's gold price, which is actually, an old gold price because gold is running so hot right now that it's hard to keep track almost. But you guys did, today's gold price, and also I think was it a 2600 level NPV?
Yeah, that's right. So the base case was done at $2,600 an ounce. That's obviously very conservative. Like if we look at where we are today, around 3,700, and more on the gold price, there's a huge delta there. And people might wonder why do base case so low at 2,600? And that's because engineering firms are very conservative. This is an Ausenco-led study. They're a very reputable company, and they tend to look at trailing averages rather than long-term pricing. So the base case at 2,600 is very robust on its own. It's an after-tax NPV of $610 million, an after-tax IRR 44%, and also very favorable NPV to capex ratio of 2. Move that to where we sit today, what we in our news release called the spot price, which was the low on Friday last week was 36.50, obviously trading much higher now.
Yeah.
And that the project produced an after-tax NPV of $1.25 billion, and the IRR after tax at 74%, and then that NPV capex ratio at 4.2. So tremendous set of economics, robust across the range of gold prices, even if you go below 2,600, but clearly a project that warrants moving forward, and we have a plan for that.
I try not to get too excited about projects like this, but it's kind of the perfect fit for my investment thesis in junior mining in general. And so I have to go there. Your current market cap is, if I'm not mistaken, around 55, under 60 million Canadian. And Correct. You're telling us that one of your projects is conservatively worth 10 times that. Am I getting this right?
That's right. At 2,600, it's worth 10 times.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify this.
After tax, yes.
After tax, yes. That's very important. After tax. That's amazing. Great job on getting that through. And just acting in the way that we as investors are supposed to act when the market isn't giving us credit. Then what, we buy more stock, we participate in those companies that are not out there spending and promoting for no reason. And you guys, you got your timing just absolutely really, 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 really on point. And so, okay, what is the upside case here? I mean, are we doing this PEA because we want to sell the project, because we want to advance it? Are we going to do infill drilling, or are we going to expand, the footprint? Are there pods of mineralization that are yet to be explored?
Yeah, our primary goal is to create value. That's not to say we wouldn't mine eventually and evolve as a mining company. We're not built as a team to execute, build a mine, and be a production company. We're built to execute along that steepest part of the Lassonde curve. That's through discovery, resource definition, and early stage development. And we feel there's so much more that can be unlocked in this project. Obviously, trading at a huge discount already, but as we advance as we get our story firstly out from under the radar here and people learn about us, but also as we advance through the steps we've identified for the project. They outlined in our news release, through pre-feasibility, looking even at an alternative scenario that can bring production forward even sooner. Looking at exploration plans, there's tremendous potential to grow the resources there as well. Those are outlined. And obviously then continuing with permitting, there's a lot of de-risking resource growth opportunities ahead of us here for the project. So we believe there's still so much value to be unlocked for our shareholders and want to drive that through. And along the way, there's always interest. We have interest now, there'll be interest down the road as we de-risk. And so there's always the possibility for a transaction there. But the key driver for us is value creation.
Mm-hmm. And we love talking about the upside and the numbers and the potential, but what are, maybe the potential risks of Goldfields as a project in and of itself?
Yeah, Goldfields is, for a PEA stage asset, is significantly de-risked already, comparative to typical PEAs, which are often based on inferred resources. They're in remote locations, they don't have infrastructure, there's no precedent for permitting, things like that. So what we have at Goldfields is a remarkable set of factors there that include 97% of our PEA mine plan is in indicated resources. That's huge because it's a high confidence estimate that we don't require any additional drilling to convert those indicated resources into reserves. That's time and money that we're saving there. So it's incredibly de-risked from that point of view. That resource as well reconciles to the small amount of historical production there within 1%. So we have a really high confidence estimate on those resources.
And what can we expect news-wise regarding Goldfields moving forward?
News-wise, we're going to be doing de-risking. There's, in terms of PFS studies, some of those, and we're also, an advantage there is we're not doing a lot of this data from scratch. The project has a history and it has some historical data sets we can leverage off. So a lot of the work, again, we're doing is validation of historical data sets. It's not a lot of time, it's not a lot of money to get it to a modern PFS standard. So those are going to be key bits of news coming out. There's also exploration drilling that's going to be happening. We plan to do that early next year, testing a lot of exceptional targets on the property where there's a clear path to, we believe, expanding the resource base. There'll be permitting milestones as well reached, which are very important these days in terms of showing it can move forward and the timeframes needed to move it forward. So there's a lot of news to come out of there. I think the resource side is obviously a key driver, and the exploration drilling that'll be upcoming is really exciting from that point of view.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so let's move to the Mexican asset, Poma Rosa. And the reason why I always like to know a little bit more about this is because I am not a geologist. And so when I hear about upside, geologically speaking, I want to understand it better. So what is the known, within reason, without too much fluff and promises that we can't guarantee in mining, which is basically most of them. But when it comes to what we basically know about the Poma Rosa project, what are we talking about so far, resource-wise, and what's some of the upside geologically speaking?
Yeah, firstly, it's essentially a project you get for free in Fortune Bay at the moment, because Goldfields is already undervalued.
For free in a company that's already, 1/10 of its actual.
Yeah. and there's obviously the upside on the uranium too. So Poma Rosa is an exceptional asset. It's got a geological setting, second to none. You can look at our deck there. It's pretty clear and simple, I think explained. It's in a very unique setting. In terms of the resources there is a historical resource. It's bigger than Goldfields at 1.7 million ounces. It was defined, by a predecessor of ours back in 2003 to sort of 2007. So that's a resource that can be expanded. It is open in places. There's potential there. There's also a prospect on the project called Cerro Lamina, which was drilled by Kinross under an option they had there. And there's enough drilling there for an inferred resource. And that's been confirmed by a QP we plan to use for the project. He's looked at all the data and confirmed that there's sufficient drilling to put a maiden resource out for Cerro Lamina. So we'll be doing Cerro Lamina. We'll also be putting the Campamento historical resource of 1.7 million ounces into current resources. And then there's numerous other targets, shallow targets that start at surface on the property where historical drillings happened. There's good intercepts and just not constrained in terms of the geology properly and warrant follow. Now, everything I've mentioned here is in these cover rocks where it was the low-hanging fruit back in the day where soils were collected, there were anomalies, and they started drilling these, and it's such a target-rich environment because of this amazing setting. So lots of gold. Almost every hole drilled is mineralized on that property, and you can take a look at some of the historical tech reports for that. But all this I'm talking about is in these cover rocks, and sitting beneath is this huge porphyry system which hasn't been explored yet. The previous focus was gold, Kinross Linear Gold and Kinross Gold, and they went after the shallow things as one would. But there's this bigger concept that hasn't been tested, the porphyry, and it's likely a copper gold porphyry. We know it's a mineralized system because we do have some holes in the property where this porphyry comes closer to surface, and you see some exceptional copper grades. We're talking, 1%, 0.8% copper equivalents over significant intervals. There's one hole there, it's a 0.8% copper equivalent over 600 meters. That hole starts in mineralization on surface and it ends in mineralization. So it's an exceptional system that needs to be explored. And the surface has just been scratched there. So that's a real big upside on that project. But in addition to obviously in the gold, the 1.7 million ounces at the historical resources, the Cerro Lamina and these other targets, which are all shallow. So it's a project that has got to be careful the words you use these days, but it's exceptional potential. And if you talk to geologists who've worked in the Americas, they normally know it because it's a outstanding asset. And we look forward. We're taking the steps now to start work on that project.
Yeah, well, hats off to you guys for even getting that project in the first place and having it in a junior. You said copper equivalent. Are we talking copper gold, or is it copper moly, something else?
It's largely copper gold. And the gold is quite strong in that equivalent. One could, at today's prices, one might switch it the other way around. But it's good. There's a little bit of moly. There's a bit of silver in there as well. But it's really a copper gold system. And there's a historical mine actually to the north of our concession where they did mine previously. It's a more polymetallic, but copper and gold, the big drivers there. So there's a system there. It just needs to be looked at, and we've got plans to start to understand that through some geophysics, and then start to drill some of these deeper holes to test the concept.
Okay, so I did mention, good job on getting the project, but now come to think of it, I didn't really actually dig into the history. How did you guys get this project in the first place? Because it seems like this is a project that sits in companies that are much larger than yours. Porphyries need to be drilled throughout, and that costs a lot of money, and usually juniors shy away from that. How did you guys get it, and what was the attraction at the time?
Yeah, so this project goes back a ways to our predecessor, Linear Gold, who was actually run by our executive chairman, Wade Dorr. And Linear Gold explored it. There's an option with Kinross. And, when Fortune Bay, there was a series of transactions where Linear Gold became Brigus Gold that eventually got merged and sold off to what is now McEwen Mining. But as a result of those transactions, these were sort of non-core assets at the time, both Goldfields and Poma Rosa, and they got spun out into Fortune Bay in 2014. And, the company sat with these assets very, very patiently, not blowing up the share structure, minimizing dilution over the years, waiting for the right cycle. And we all know how important timing is in this business. And it's a real, that wait's a real testament to how we like to run the business. And today we sit with these terrific assets, just 58 million shares outstanding. And we know that every dollar value we add to our market cap is going to get amplified in that share price. So we're particularly well poised for and built for this cycle.
Speaking of which, how much do insiders, management, and board own of the company currently?
Insider ownership's around 17%. So we're really well aligned with shareholders. I've bought some shares myself, with my own money, obviously also have some options and things, and then a lot of it coming through, outside of insider ownership. It's tightly held amongst, a network of strategic high net worth individuals. We've got some fantastic shareholders, on our register. And so, really, really pleased with how we set up.
Very good. What is the cash situation right now?
Cash is just over $1 million. And that's enough to fully fund the initial catalyst we identified for the gold projects. We put out some plans earlier this year, and there were 4 things we wanted to do. And the one was the updated PEA for Goldfields. We've checked that box. Number 2 was permitting, starting the permitting at Goldfields. We realized that's the critical path for the project. We've started to check that box. Permitting's underway. We've been doing that work through the fall here. We're looking to engage with regulators early next year. And then moving to Poma Rosa, the two catalysts there was one, get exploration agreements to start work with the community. I should mention that's a very key part of that project. The surface lands are held by what's called the HEDOS community groups, and we are working with them to reach agreements, and everything's been very supportive and on track with that. So that's the number 3. And the last catalyst, which is Poma Rosa as well, was do a 43-101 estimate for the project, which is all included in this $1 million budget, and get current resources on our books, and then be able to build on that through exploration. So those 4 things, that I mentioned, they're all fully funded under this money we have left, and then we'll look to take the next stage for financing the projects going forward.
That's exciting. When do you expect the compliant resource to come out for Poma Rosa?
When?
When, yes.
Yes, when. That is based on the exploration agreement, the timing of that. We don't want to, while we could get a site visit in now, we want to do things right, with the community. We want to take the right steps in the right order, build a strong foundation of support. We've been doing a lot of work around educational pieces with exploration and mining, and building a foundation for exploration and beyond with the community. So we expect to, that we hope to do that soon this year, is the plan, and then we'll go from there.
That's a lot of news flow coming from you guys. Super excited. Awesome. Well, I am super biased. This is a partner company, which I'm very happy and proud to be associated with, because this is exactly the type of company that I like to invest in. So much so I bought shares before I, ever signed with them. So buyer beware, but also do your own due diligence, and you might come to the same conclusions that I have come, that this is a very inexpensive company with a ton of upside, with enough diversification in its asset base to make your head go completely bonkers. And I guess the last parting words would be, Dale, how can people find out more about Fortune Bay?
Just go to our website, and it's fortunebaycorp.com. There's a ton of information there. There's even a button you can push on if you want to book an interview with myself for an investor call. There's also a phone number there. You can phone our office. But Joe, we always welcome people to reach out, ask questions. We sincerely enjoy the interaction with people interested, both shareholders or prospective shareholders. So feel free to reach out at any time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dale. And I will be talking to you soon, because you guys have news coming out all the time. And it looks like good news. Good news for shareholders, happy shareholders. Your stock's been up quite a bit in the last 2-3 months, but now with this PEA out, people are going to start taking notice. You guys are very active in social media, which makes my job very, very easy. So thank you very much, and I'll chat to you soon.
Thanks for having us, Fabi.